Right now, you can probably think of one thing you know you should do. Maybe it's the message you haven't sent, the workout you keep rescheduling, the relationship conversation you've rehearsed in your head 100 times but never had out loud. You know exactly what the right move is. You could explain it to a friend in one sentence, and yet somehow you don't do it. Here's the contradiction hiding inside that sentence. Knowing isn't controlling. You can hold the correct answer completely and still watch your own hands do something else. It's not that you forgot. It's not that you got new information overnight that changed your mind. You knew this morning. You'll know tonight. And somewhere in between, the knowing simply stopped being the thing steering the wheel. That gap between knowing and doing isn't a personal failure. It's old. It's so old that a man in Athens gave it a name over 2,000 years ago, and he considered it one of the strangest problems in the entire study of human behavior. He called it akrasia. Say it once in your head. Akrasia. It has no clean English translation, which is part of why it stayed invisible. It isn't laziness. It isn't weak willpower. It's a specific, nameable event. The moment better judgment loses to something faster, in a habit, in a relationship, in a decision you'll make later today without even noticing the word applies. Hold on to that word. By the end of this video, it won't just explain your procrastination. It's going to change what you think discipline actually is, and it's going to hand you a completely different question to ask yourself the next time you catch yourself slipping. Here's the strange part. If you ask someone why they didn't do the thing they knew they should do, they rarely say, "I didn't know it was right." They almost always know, and they did the other thing anyway. That cuts against something we assume constantly, that if people just understood better, they'd act better. Parents explain consequences to teenagers. Doctors explain risk to patients. And the explaining rarely works, because the person on the other end usually already understood. So here's the question underneath all of this. Is that person lying to themselves, or is something stranger going on? Socrates thought the first option was the only one possible. He believed that if you truly know something is good for you, you cannot choose otherwise. To him, all wrongdoing was ignorance wearing a disguise. The person who cheats on their diet doesn't really grasp what they're giving up. Fix the understanding, and the behavior fixes itself. It's a strangely comforting idea. Nobody's actually broken. Nobody's choosing badly on purpose. Just a gap in information, waiting to be closed. Aristotle disagreed. Quietly, but completely. He'd watched people receive the information, understand it fully, agree with it out loud, and still walk straight into the exact thing they just argued against. If Socrates were right, that shouldn't be possible even once. Aristotle had watched it happen constantly. And that's the crack Socrates' whole theory falls through. If understanding alone were enough, one good conversation would cure almost anything. But it doesn't. And everyone watching this already knows that, from the inside. Ask anyone who's ever tried to quit something, fix something, or leave something. They rarely say the moment of failure came from not knowing better. They usually say it came from knowing perfectly well, and losing anyway. Picture someone who smokes and can recite the statistics better than their own doctor. They know the exact mechanism of what tar does to lung tissue. They're not confused. They light the next one anyway. Socrates would need to say that person, deep down, doesn't really believe what they just recited perfectly. Aristotle looked at that same person and refused to insult their intelligence that way. He wasn't interested in defending them either. He just thought the diagnosis was wrong, and a wrong diagnosis leads to a treatment that keeps failing. So here's the payoff, this early in the video, in one sentence. Your failures of self-control were never proof you don't understand yourself. They're proof that understanding, by itself, was never the thing in charge. Sit with that for a moment. It already changes the question you should be asking about your own life. Think about the last time you were mid-argument with someone you love, and a calm, clear voice in your head said, "Don't say that next sentence." You heard it, you knew it, and you said the sentence anyway, Or 11 p.m., phone in hand, fully aware that 5 more minutes has never once been 5 minutes, and you did it again. This is basically every human being who has ever tried to change something about themselves. Here's the strange part you might not have noticed. It shows up in miniature too. The email you tell yourself you'll get to while doing 3 lower priority things first, fully aware of the order the entire time. The comparison you make on social media, aware the feed is engineered and unrepresentative, and feeling worse anyway, as if knowing changed nothing. Or the gym membership. You know with total clarity, standing in your kitchen at 7 a.m., that you'll feel better after going. You felt better every single time before, and you still choose the couch, holding that knowledge the entire way down onto it. You've experienced this hundreds of times, in versions so small you've stopped even noticing them. The alarm you set with real intention the night before, and silence within 4 seconds of it going off. The message you read, fully intending to reply right after this, which turns into 6 hours. The food you order instead of the meal you already prepped, while knowing mid-order exactly which one you'll regret. The just one more video that you say to yourself in the same tone every single night, as if saying it more convincingly will make it true this time. The purchase you make at midnight, fully aware you'll regret it by Thursday. The interruption you make mid-argument, hearing yourself do it, unable to stop the sentence before it leaves your mouth. The text to someone you already know is bad for you, sent with the exact same clarity about why it's a bad idea that you had the last 3 times. So what is actually happening in that gap? Here's what Aristotle noticed that Socrates missed. Knowledge isn't one single thing sitting in your head, ready to fire at all times. You can know something in general. Sugar late at night ruins my sleep. While in the exact moment the ice cream is in front of you, that knowledge simply isn't active. It's true, somewhere in you. It just isn't present. Aristotle's word for this was almost clinical. The knowledge has gone dormant, like a sleeping man, technically still holding a fact, unable to use it. The same thing happens with people, not just habits. You can know in general that a certain friend drains you every time you see them, and still say yes to coffee, because in the moment of the invitation, that general knowledge isn't the thing doing the talking. That reframes everything. This was never about intelligence. It was about timing. Picture it like this. The knowledge arrives at the door a few seconds after the feeling has already answered it and let itself in. By the time judgment gets there, the decision's already been made in another room. And that single shift is already worth something. The smartest person you know is not immune to this. Neither is the most disciplined one. Nobody graduates out of the timing problem. You just get better, or worse, at managing it. Think about how strange that actually is. A world-class athlete can understand recovery science better than most doctors and still skip sleep the night before a big decision, because in that specific hour, the dormant knowledge about recovery simply wasn't the one running the show. Expertise doesn't inoculate you. It just gives your future self better material to work with whenever it actually gets to speak. Which raises another question. If knowledge isn't enough, what actually wins? If the knowledge is still in there, what wakes it up? And what puts it to sleep in the first place? Most self-help never answers this. It just says try harder in new packaging, which explains nothing. It just relabels the mystery as a moral failing and moves on. Aristotle wanted the actual hinge, the exact point where knowing and doing come apart. Not another slogan, the mechanism underneath the slogan. Find that, and you found the real lever. Not motivation, not willpower, the mechanism itself. Aristotle grew up around medicine. His father was a physician. He spent his early life watching bodies as much as minds, how appetite overrides judgment, how pain makes a person say things they know are false simply because pain is louder than truth in that instant. By the time he wrote the Nicomachean Ethics, he wasn't trying to win an argument against his teacher's teacher. He was describing something he'd watched happen constantly, in ordinary people, not villains, people who could out-argue you about why a habit was destroying them, and did it again the same afternoon. He noticed something else too. Two people can do the exact same wrong thing, and only one of them is what he'd call acratic. One does it and feels nothing. No friction, no memory of having known better. Aristotle would say that person's knowledge was never really awake to begin with. It's a different failure, closer to Socrates' picture, and closer to what most people mean by simple bad character. The other does it, and the instant it's over, feels the full weight of having betrayed their own judgment. That second person still has the knowledge, still holds the verdict, and lost the moment anyway. Not stupidity, not evil. Aristotle called it a kind of temporary blindness, of attention, not the eyes. Here's the strange part he built his whole theory on. The acratic person isn't the one who needs to be taught right from wrong. They already know it better than most. Their problem shows up somewhere else entirely. That's the frightening part. You weren't defeated by ignorance. You were defeated by something that already agreed with you. Here's the mechanism. Picture two lines of reasoning, running at once. Line 1, sweet things are pleasant. This is sweet, so taste it. Fast, complete, satisfying. Line 2, things that harm me long-term should be avoided. This harms me long-term, so avoid it. True, slower, often unfinished. Both are you. Only one finishes in time. That's it. That's the whole mechanism. Akrasia isn't reason against unreason. It's reason against faster reason. And it isn't only about food. Same shape, different subject. Ignoring this text avoids discomfort. This is discomfort, so ignore it. Fast and done, before the slower line about the relationship even gets a word in. Notice what that means. You're not choosing badly. You're finishing a different sentence faster. That's the entire disagreement with Socrates, compressed into one sentence. He thought the problem was which sentence you believed. Aristotle thought the problem was which sentence finished first. One more version, so the pattern really lands. Confrontation risks the relationship, and avoiding this confrontation avoids that risk, so avoid it. Fast, tidy, and finished before the slower line. Avoiding this will cost the relationship more than the confrontation would, even gets going. Every decision is a race. The winner is whoever finishes first. Try this. Picture two advisors sitting behind you right now. One speaks slowly, full sentences, always about next week, next year, the person you're building toward. Call it your wiser voice if you want a name for it. The other speaks in single words. Now, more, yes, and never finishes a sentence about consequences because that isn't its job. In a calm room, the wiser voice is easy to hear. Here's where it becomes strange. Make it 9 p.m. Hard day. Someone says one slightly wrong thing. The wiser voice starts, "This isn't worth the fight. Let it go," and doesn't finish before the fast one has already said the thing you'll apologize for tomorrow. The knowledge was true the entire time. It just never finished speaking. Think of it like two runners in a relay, except only one of them ever gets the baton before the finish line closes. The slow runner isn't weaker, he just starts too late, every single time the room is loud enough. Try the scene again, different setting. You've been putting off applying for a job you actually want because the application asks you to describe a failure, and thinking about that failure still stings. Part of you says, do it anyway. The discomfort is 30 seconds. The opportunity is real. Another part doesn't even argue. It just closes the tab and opens something easier. 10 seconds. No debate. Judgment barely got the first word out. That's the pattern, every time. Not a fair fight, decided on the merits, a race decided by whoever finishes first. So self-control was never one skill you either have or don't. Every act of giving in has a locatable cause, a moment judgment didn't finish in time. The disciplined people you admire aren't running on more willpower. They've usually just built lives where impulse rarely gets a loud room to win in. Here's the version of this that should genuinely unsettle you. Think of the version of this that isn't a text message or a snack. Think of the version that's a relapse, a relationship you knew was ending 2 years before you left it, while still being able to describe in perfect detail exactly why you should have left. Think of the apology you never sent to someone who's no longer reachable, where you knew the entire time, and the knowing changed nothing, and now there's no more later left to fix it. Or think smaller, but just as corrosive over time. The career risk you knew you should take at 30, that you're still explaining away at 45, using almost the exact same sentence you used 15 years ago. The words haven't even changed, only the years have. That's akrasia at full weight, not a productivity flaw, a way of watching your own life from one step behind your own judgment. Character isn't built under pressure. Pressure reveals what you've already rehearsed. That's the part that should stay with you longer than the phone example did. Now, the honest counterpoint. Socrates isn't simply wrong here. Ask someone right after they've given in. Did you really feel, in that instant, how bad this would feel later? Often, no. The knowledge was abstract, not vivid. Socrates has a point. But Aristotle's answer matters more, because it changes what you actually do about it. If Socrates is right, the fix is always more information. Explain the harm more clearly, and behavior should follow. Anyone who's tried to out-argue a bad habit with better facts alone knows how often that fails. Aristotle explains why. The knowledge can be complete and still lose, because the problem was never what you know. It's whether it's awake when appetite speaks. That distinction is the whole reason this discussion still matters 2,000 years later. It's the difference between telling someone, just know better, which they already do, and asking a completely different question. What has this person actually rehearsed, under real pressure, more than the thing they claim to want? And here's the moment that reorganizes everything. We treat failures of self-control as evidence of character, proof we're lazy, weak, broken at the core. Aristotle says the opposite. Your failure is evidence of training, not worth. A report on which reasoning has been rehearsed enough to finish itself under pressure, not a verdict on who you are. Whichever voice has had more repetition under real stress is the one that keeps winning. Not because it's stronger, because it's faster. That single word, faster, not stronger, is doing all the work here. It's the difference between a moral flaw and a training gap, and it changes what you're even allowed to be frustrated about. You didn't lose because you were weak. You lost because another version of yourself had practiced longer. Remember the two advisors from earlier. This is the moment they were always leading to. Not a fight between good and bad, but a race between two versions of you, and whichever one has rehearsed more. This also kills a popular piece of self-help logic, that wanting it enough is what matters. It isn't. Rehearsal is. You can want the better life more than anything, and still lose the moment, every time, if the impulse has simply practiced more than your judgment has. Sit with that for a second. It means the years you spent feeling ashamed of not wanting it badly enough were aimed at the wrong target entirely. Your habits don't reveal your values. They reveal your repetitions. You didn't need more desire. You needed more repetitions of the slower voice, finishing its sentence, under conditions that actually resembled the ones where it kept losing. That's a harder thing to hear than just want it more, but it's also the first version of this that actually points somewhere useful. So what do you do with this? Not try harder. Aristotle thought that fails by design. It asks your deliberate mind to win a race it isn't built to win under pressure. His actual method is architectural. Change the conditions before the moment arrives, so impulse never gets the stage. Don't negotiate with the phone at 11 p.m. Charge it in another room. Don't rely on remembering your values mid-argument. Decide the rule in a calm moment, in advance. Don't wait to feel like applying for the job. Pre-write the failure story on a Tuesday afternoon when it doesn't sting, so it's already sitting there the day fear shows up to argue against sending it. Here's the unexpected part. This even applies to the biggest decision you're avoiding right now, the one from the escalation block, the one with no more leader attached. Aristotle's answer isn't to finally feel enough regret to act. It's to remove yourself, today, from the exact room where impulse gets to speak, before the moment where it matters most arise again. Virtue, for Aristotle, was never a feeling. It's a trained disposition, built the way a craftsman builds skill, small, unglamorous repetitions, until it stops requiring a war to perform. Discipline isn't wanting more, it's rehearsing better. You don't become someone who exercises by wanting to more. You become that person by doing it until it stops requiring a fight. The same goes for the hard conversation you've been avoiding. You don't become brave by waiting to feel brave. You become that person by having a smaller, easier version of it enough times that silence stops being the automatic move. Aristotle's word for this repeated practice was close to habituation. His claim was blunt. We become just by doing just acts, self-controlled by doing acts of self-control, not the other way around. None of this is glamorous. He never promised a single dramatic turning point. What he promised was slower, and honestly, more believable. A person who rehearses the wiser sentence enough times, in small enough moments, eventually finds that sentence finishing itself, even when the room is loud. And there's a quiet test for whether it's working, one Aristotle himself pointed to. Not whether you still feel pulled toward the old thing. You probably will for a long time, but whether the pull gets shorter. Whether the pause before you act stretches from half a second to 2 seconds to 5. That stretching is the whole project. It's not dramatic. It's the only thing that's ever actually worked. Remember the message you haven't sent, the workout, the conversation you've rehearsed but never had. You'll meet that gap again today, maybe more than once. When you do, skip the old verdict. Don't ask, what's wrong with me? Ask which version of you has had more rehearsal. Aristotle never promised impulse disappears. He promised something quieter. The pull gets weaker, and the pause gets longer every time judgment finishes its sentence instead. That's the whole trade. Not a war you win once and never fight again. A slightly longer pause, earned one rehearsal at a time, for the rest of your life. And there's relief in that, if you let there be. It means the fight was never rigged against you. It just hadn't been rehearsed yet. Think about that the next time you catch yourself mid-slip, mid-scroll, mid-snack, mid-sentence you already regret before you've finished saying it. That moment isn't a verdict on your worth. It's a status report, telling you exactly which voice you've been feeding, and exactly which one you haven't. There's no final version of you waiting at the end of this, where impulse goes silent forever. There's only the next moment, and whichever voice you've given more practice to, walking into it. Somewhere today, that moment is already scheduled, even if nothing's on your calendar. A room will get loud, one way or another, and 2 versions of you will start talking at once. Your whole life, you might believe your decisions reveal who you are. Maybe they only reveal what you trained to happen first. The question isn't whether you know the right thing. You already do. The question is what you've trained to be fast. Don't tell me what habit you're trying to fix. Tell me which sentence in your own mind always finishes first. See you in the next video.